several universities in NTT, I guess, right, Blake? It was it's a workshop held together by Leiden University and the
From
University of
Leiden.
Hawaii. And I was a PhD student, Lisa was a PhD student, and also Blake was also a PhD
Oh, so
student at the
you
time.
collaborated to do that
Yes, it was a
workshop.
collaboration workshop.
Why was in Kupang, not in other places in Indonesia?
Whoa. I'm not
Was
sure.
there something interesting in Kupang?
The languages were very interesting. Were more interesting, I
Well,
guess.
people
Yeah,
also
because
came from, the participants
the
came
So
from
diversity
different
what
parts of
language?
NTT, right? So it's more like the participant who traveled to NTT to document,
yeah.
yeah, various languages in the region, not only the one in Kupang, but also people from Alor, right? We had participants from Alor and surrounding areas.
But it helps in Kupang.
Yes.
Ya, selamat pagi Mbak Sa, semuanya. Suara saya terdengar?
Ya, jelas kok.
Oke.
Tapi mungkin kameranya sedikit dimundurin. It's too
Oh
close to
ya,
me.
oke. Thank you. Oke. Langsung ketemu atau kita masih menunggu?
Just wait minutes because we need to wait for Pak Obing and
Oke.
also Pak Heri, right?
Oke.
So sorry, Blake. So we have to wait for a moment, for a minute, because we need to wait for our chairman because he will open it officially.
Sudah ada backgroundnya ya Bapak Ibu di chat. Blake, if you want to use it, it's up to you though.
Sorry, if I want to use what chat?
If there's a virtual background, if you want to use it for your background, I mean you don't have to
Oh, okay, let me try.
in the chat. Awesome, yeah.
Online atau dia kemungkinan di rawat saya katanya kalau jatuh itu bisa kambuh dia suka tiba-tiba di jalan takutnya iya saya kan sini jauh kan.
Bu Sriwinarti, ini berarti CWS-nya? Itu ruang CWS? Oh, ditutup lagi. Mana tadi?
Iya betul Mas. Room
Oh, tadi
CWS.
CWS-nya kok ya? Itu
Ya di lantai 2.
co-working space-nya. Itu yang di gedung dekat ini apa yang katanya dekat kantin dulu ya?
Iya
Bukan.
betul. Di PDI dulunya.
Oke. Tunggu kedatangan kami ya.
Siap.
Gue kalungin bunga lo.
Oh,
Bukan
disambut.
ditaburin bunga ya, tapi dikalungin bunga ya.
Mm.
And I will strangle you.
Terus yang di gedung itu, yang gedung lama itu nggak boleh atau lagi direnov atau gimana?
Iya lagi direnov sepertinya.
Oh, lagi direnov ya.
Mm.
Kang Fajar atau Iko atau Mbak Nisa mungkin bisa notif ke Mas Obing sama Pak Heri kali ya? Apa ada halangan atau bagaimana?
Iya, Pak Heri.
Udah aku kasih tahu
Oke.
Pak Heri dan gimana Pak Jim?
Karena nggak jarang-jarangnya Pak Heri sama Pak Obing itu belum masuk kalau udah jam 10 lebih. Jam 9 lebih maksudnya.
Pak Heri udah standby sih. Tadi pagi minta ringkasan.
Mhm. Oh ya, Pak Heri lagi connect. Nggak Mas Obing lagi. Lagi mencoba untuk masuk. Hmm. Itu Pak Heri, Mbak Nisa.
Udah.
Ini
Oke. Apa perlu masih menunggu Mas Obing dulu atau nanti Mas Obing menyusul atau gimana? Karena di sini pembicara sudah ada, Pak Heri juga sudah ada. Halo Pak Heri,
Halo, selamat pagi.
pagi. Wih,
Pagi.
segar sekali hari ini kayaknya ya.
Ya, kalau pagi segar lah.
Sore lowbat.
Kalau sore ya udah acak-acakan muka.
Oke, jadi nanti moderatornya Mas Iko, pembicara kita juga sudah hadir di sini.
November dan kamu tahu apa? Aku tahu.
Mas Iko moderatornya udah bisa ya. Nanti
Ya
Mas
mungkin
Obing
bisa
nyusul.
dimulai ya. Nanti kan Mas Obing bisa menyusul kali ya,
Ya.
karena
Oke.
Nama moderator
udah
take
10
over ya.
lebih.
Oh ya,
Yes,
berarti
please.
yang memberikan speech hanya Pak Heri saja ya.
Ya,
Ya.
nanti
Pembicaranya
mungkin di
siapa aja?
closingnya aja nanti kesimpulan
Ya.
Pak Obing.
Hanya satu Pak Blake dari University of Hawaii at Manoa
Oh,
USD. Okay. Anyone can hear me? It's good. Okay, I will start the webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning in Jakarta time. Welcome to our Head of Research Organization for Archaeology, Language, and Literature, Bapak Heri Yogaswara. Welcome to our special speaker from University of Hawaii at Manoa, USA, Mr. Andel L. Blake. Also, welcome and thank you to webinar participant who have attended this morning. Welcome to our monthly webinar from the Research Center for Language and Literature
Karena yang satu
Preservation.
dia enggak
Please mute the speaker. Okay, and try again. Welcome to our monthly webinar from the Research Center for Language and Literature Preservation under the Research Organization for Archaeology, Language, and Literature in National Research and Innovation Agency, or we call it BRAIN Indonesia. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Satwika Budiono, or you can call me Iko for short, from the Research Center for Language and Literature Preservation. I will be serving as your moderator today, and you will be hearing a presentation from Blake about documentation of plant-related language on Alor Island around 30 minutes until 1 hour later. But let's first listen to the opening speech from the Research Organization for Archaeology, Language, and Literature, Mr. Heri Yogaswara. To me, Mr. Heri Yogaswara, time is yours.
Thank you for moderator or MC, both of your job now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan dan rahayu. Very good morning to Blake from the University Hawaii at Manoa and all senior researcher at the Language and Literature Documentation and all researcher in the research center and also all audience in this webinar. First of all, I would like to give appreciation for the Research Center for Language and Literature Preservation for this very important and very interesting topic, I think, related with documentation of plant-related language on Alor Island. Yeah, actually, my background is human ecology, and I was trained in ethnobotany. Actually, I think this meeting will be very interesting about because we would like to know and we would like to understand what the relationship between the plant and the language. I think it's broader than language. I think what the relationship between the plant and culture of the Alor Island. And again, thank you for you, Blake, to give and share about your finding. Yeah, I read in the abstract of this research. I think this is quite long term research. Yeah, in Alor. And also using we call the corpora. Yeah, actually, our research organization now really interested. Yeah, something related corpora and also related with the corpus. Yeah, even though this, I think 2025, we will start research related with the we call database and also corpus. Yeah, I do hope you can also join with these activities. Yeah, especially making research collaboration with researcher from BRAIN or from other university to do research related with the corpus. Yeah, yeah, we would like to really learn how to make a good corpus, and the corpus is really useful for our research. Yeah, and also I invite to all participants of this webinar to start to make a collaboration with BRAIN, especially with Research Center of Language and Literature Documentation. Yeah, because I think a week ago, yeah, we just launched the new scheme for we call the House of Program, yeah, Rumah Program, and we have 3 House of Program, And then the first rumah program is related with we call the sustainable culture. We allow researchers to do research, field research, and also to do desk study. And the second rumah program, we focus on we call corpus and also database. And the third related with the fundamental research related with archaeology, language, and literature. I think we can combine between the how to make a good corpus and also how to deep into the fundamental problem related to the language and literature documentation. Because I think this is we have already so many data, there's so many database, maybe we have so many corpus, and how to use the corpus for our focus on the we call the fundamental research in language and literature documentation. I think that's all for now. And because I need to open this meeting, yeah. Okay. I formally open the discussion on documentation of plan related language on Alor Island on Monday, 4th November 2024. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi Santi Om. Rahayu, Rahayu, and very good morning to all of you. Thank you.
Ya, thank you for Bapak Heri Yogaswara for your opening speech, and thanks for sharing with us. And also, I would like to give a welcome to our research center for language and literature preservation, Bapak Katubi, for joining in our webinar. However, before Blake start the presentation, I will first read the Blake's curriculum vitae for short. Our special speaker, Blake, a bachelor degree in measuring biology at Atkin College, and then master and PhD in linguistics at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Besides, many awards have been achieved, but I will read only 3, including the Belinsky Dissertation Fellowship, Belinsky Summer Research Award, and ELDP Independent Grant about documenting environmental knowledge in Abui, a language of Eastern Indonesia. In addition, Black has also received many scholarship, publication, and conference presentation that cannot be read one by one. Now, moving along to our session, please welcome Black, who will be speaking to us on documentation of plant-related language on Alor Island. For webinar participants, you can ask questions during the presentation in the Zoom chat column. And no need to worry about the language. Webinar participant can ask in Indonesia, and then I will translate and read them to our special speakers today. For Black, time is yours.
Ya, terima kasih untuk pengetahuan itu. Selamat pagi, bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu. So from here on, my presentation will be in English because it's easier for me. But as Pa Satwiko said, you can ask questions in Indonesian or in English. Okay, so let me start screen sharing. Okay. And can I just get a thumbs up that you can see this? Okay. So yes, I'm going to talk about documentation of plant-related language on Alor Island. Okay. So on this presentation, I'm going to give some background information about the field of language documentation as applied to the plant domain, also the biogeographical region and the linguistic region. And then I'm going to talk about the actual documentation project, including the data collection and processing. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the findings from analyzing the documentation project. And then I'm going to direct you to where the data is, basically. Okay. So just to differentiate between language documentation and language description, we conducted language documentation fieldwork during 2016 to 2020. And so the products of that are the corpora, which are stored at the Endangered Languages Archive and at Paradisic. And then I use those corpora as data in writing my dissertation, which would be a work of language description. And then in this presentation, I'm going to focus more on the documentation project itself, rather than get into too many technical details of the language analysis part. So language documentation of the plant domain. First of all, what is language documentation? If you're not familiar with language documentation, it aims to record the linguistic practices of a speech community. Audio and video recordings are created, transcribed, translated, annotated, and archived. And the data can be used for many purposes by researchers as well as community members, including for making pedagogical materials. And so language documentation can help to preserve and revitalize endangered languages. So just an overview of what that process looks like. First recordings are made of the language, or of the speech community rather, because this can be done in multilingual speech communities. And then transcriptions are made of the recordings, and then translations are made into languages of wider communication, such as Indonesian or English. And then the recordings, as well as the transcriptions and translations, are all stored in an archive that keeps them secure and also available to other researchers. So now I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about traditional ecological knowledge, and then I will try to bring those topics together, language documentation and traditional ecological knowledge. So traditional ecological knowledge, also known as TEK, includes information, practices, and beliefs relating to the local environment, which are developed through direct experience and transmitted across generations. TEK is highly accurate, flexible, and adaptable, and thus extremely relevant to all aspects of managing natural resources in today's world. So it's not just traditional information that's only useful in the past. And then so plant-related language encodes some TEK. TEK is much broader than just plant-related language, but it's a part of it, plant-related language. So TEK is endangered globally. As societies and ecosystems change, TEK is being rapidly lost. This loss is especially rapid when there's both a cultural shift and species extinction at the same time. And then knowledge of the natural world is still underdocumented. So these semantic domains are particularly in danger of being lost from a language. So if the language itself is endangered, probably these particular semantic domains are even more endangered than the language as a whole. Okay, so now I used photos and videos for botanical identification. So this is kind of newer methodology on the botanical side of things. So photographic vouchers are beginning to be acceptable in place of physical specimens in botany. For many, many years, if you were publishing anything in botany, you had to have physical specimens, and that's just starting to change. However, video recordings really don't seem to be used much in ethnobotany or botany as a whole. Excuse me. So identification of plants from video recordings does not appear to be explored much within ethnobotany. but it has been found that video-based instruction may be as effective as live instruction in learning to identify plant species. Okay, so to try to bring these together, on the one hand, we have the traditional language documentation products, which are the audio recording or the data, which are the audio recordings and the video recordings. And that's used for documentation of people's language about plants. And then on the other hand, we have on the botany side of things, documentation of the physical plants. Now, I didn't collect physical specimens. I collected photographs and video recordings and brought those things together. And the value of that is that the language itself is preserved in the archive, and then it's tied to an actual record of the photograph or the video of the plant. Because when it's just people talking about plants, you could have a mistranslation and not know it, right? But if you have the photo there, you can go back and check, okay, what plant were they actually talking about in that recording? So that's the idea, basically. And so I'm trying to use some language documentation methods for ethnobotany. So language documentation values reproducible research. The data is made accessible for the purposes of scientific accountability. As I mentioned, my data are archived at Alor and Paradisic. And accessible photos make the scientific plant identifications checkable, unlike many previous works by linguists. So linguists haven't been as good about showing you what plants they're talking about. But I put my photos on iNaturalist because the language archives are not quite suited for that. So iNaturalist is not quite the same as secure as an archive, but it is still a place where those identifications can be checked by other researchers. Okay, so now I'm going to sort of show you what the landscape is like. For those of you who have never been to Alor Island, you can see from this photo, it's quite dry, quite mountainous. In this particular one, it's deforested. So Alor is, of course, part of the Lesser Sunda Islands, or people say East Nusantara. It is a transitional ecological zone between humid insular Southeast Asia and dry Central Australia. So from Lombok over to Alor is the Lesser Sunda's deciduous forest ecoregion of tropical dry forests, also known as monsoon forests. And the World Wildlife Fund for Nature calls the Lesser Sunda's deciduous forest ecoregion globally outstanding in biological distinctiveness and lists its conservation status as endangered. So this area is ecologically unique because it's this transitional zone, and also, you know, many of the plants and animals of this area are endangered. So as for Alor Island itself, circled there in red, there have not been many botanical records, which is to say that botanists don't really know what plants grow on Alor Islands. There's much better records for larger islands in NTT, like Flores or Timor. But for Alor, there's just a few historical records. And then more recently, Alelang 2018 collected some specimens with Abui names. And then also some more recent plant surveys by LIPI have focused just on the economic species within the protected areas. And they have not been as interested in recording names in Bahasa Daerah aside from Alor Malay. So we don't really know we don't have good records of what plants are there, and we don't have good records of tying the plants to the names. Okay, just to show you more of the landscape, here's people, Swidden farming, Abui people. They've burned the hillside and they're planting corn and rice. And here's some example of coastal plants that may or may not be familiar to you. And here's a wetter area. So it's not all dry. There are wetter valleys within the mountainous areas. And there's even waterfalls and some very large trees. So that's to give you an idea of the biogeography of the area. And now onto the linguistic region. So as you may know, Indonesia is very rich in linguistic diversity. It has the second most number of languages in the world after Papua New Guinea. And this excellent map shows those languages, families and subfamilies. So everything in Western Indonesia is, of course, part of the Austronesian language family. And then over here on the island of Papua and also in North Maluku, you see the green and brown and blue. That's showing you those are all non-Austronesian languages, the green, brown, blue. And then you may notice also in NTT down here on the island of Timor and Alor and Pantar, there's a little bit of green. So that makes this particular region very unique linguistically because you have a couple non-Austronesian languages that are related to languages on the island of Papua that are surrounded by Austronesian languages there in yellow, that particular subgroup of Austronesian. So it's both a ecologically interesting transitional zone, and it's a linguistically interesting zone where you have languages from different families that are influencing each other. So here's just Alor and Pantar zoomed in. Abui is one of the Alor Pantar languages, and it is the largest on the island of Alor, both in terms of the land area that's considered the Abui region, Abui speaking region, and it's also the largest in terms of the members of the ethnic group compared to the other ones of Alor. So the Abui language, as I mentioned, is Timor Alor Pantar language, so it's non-Austronesian. The Abui language is endangered. It's actually considered threatened on the endangered language catalog scale. And so most Abui people born after 1980 have Alor Malay as their first language rather than Abui. Speaker numbers are estimated. It's hard to know exactly, but maybe there's 41,000 ethnic Abui. And of those people, maybe only somewhere between 11,890 to 14,760 of them are fluent Abui speakers. So those are mostly the older generations, people over 40. Okay, and so now that I've gone through the background information, I'm going to go into explaining this documentation project. So first of all, data collection. You can see some of the a recording scene here in this photo. You can see that there's a audio recorder on this floor near the speakers, and there's a little bit of a video camera poking through on the side of the photo. And this particular village has electricity, but you can tell from the TV, but that's not the case for all of them. And so there's a Kindle, Amazon Kindle on the table, which is an ebook, which is very useful because it has a long battery if you're trying to read stuff. It doesn't die as quickly as a laptop. Okay. So the field sites and the consultant selection is 15 months of field work between 2016 and 2020. These were all 3-month trips that I went on. And so I was not the only person. I have members of the research team, which you'll see some of them in the photos coming up, but they helped me. Those Abui members of the research team helped me during these times. And so we went to 16 Abui villages across the Abui region, but most of the data comes from Takalelang, which is on the northern coast of Alor. And the consultants were Abui men and women ranging from their 20s to their 90s in age. So some of the people had expert plant knowledge and others really did not know much about plants at all. All the people were bilingual that we consulted with, and some were Abui dominant and some were Malay dominant. So just to go over some of the equipment, in the center photo, there's the audio recorder, the Zoom H4n audio recorder. In the photo with the cute dog, there's also a DSLR camera. These young guys are all members of the research team. And the older man there is one of the Abui consultants that we were interviewing. And then in the other photo over here, the guy with the red cap, you can see he's wearing a GoPro on his head for recording video while out walking on hikes in rugged terrain where it's not possible to carry a big video camera very easily. So that's some of the equipment. We also had lapel and headset microphones, which you might see in another photo or video. And the larger video camera, which was in the other photo. So the data types that we collected, we have a variety of audio and video recordings in both Abui and Malay, the local Malay, Alor Malay. And these linguistically range in the degree of spontaneity or speaker self-consciousness. So there's unplanned naturalistic conversations, but there's also more structured interviews and elicitation tasks. And ethnobotanically, they range by the degree that the consultants are removed from the physical plants. So sometimes there's live growing plants or fresh or processed plant parts or photographs of plants, or sometimes there's no plant stimuli at all. So it's just a broad range. The linguistic data processing, we use Elan and Flex. These are free software that you can download. So Flex over here at the top, the photo at the top, it's a dictionary database, so it's for keeping track of words. And then down here in the center is a screenshot from Elan, which has a transcription. And then in this one, there's actually 3 different translations to different languages in this particular example. So this is the very time-consuming parts of language documentation is processing this data. Takes a very long time of careful listening. Okay, so the scientific identifications of the plants are pending. As I mentioned, we have photos and videos of the plants, but we did not collect any voucher specimens. And we don't have a botanist on our team who's knowledgeable about the flora of the region. So glosses, by which I mean translations of plant names to a scientific species, are just my best guess. Yeah, so hopefully we'll have more exact scientific identifications of the plants in the future, but for now, it's basically my best guess. Okay, so a little bit about some findings from the documentation project. So just the value of the recordings overall. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, what about an audio recording or a video? So the recordings are of value to the consultants. The Abui consultants commented on how beautiful their forest looked when they watched GoPro videos of it. And they were proud to have videos of themselves available in archives, as well as having their own copies of those videos. Of course, the recordings are also of value to the researchers. So I'll show you some examples of information not initially noticed that because it's recorded, it can be further analyzed. And these provide both linguistic and non-linguistic data. And the recordings may have additional uses in the future. I'm hoping that there will be some pedagogical materials that can be made. Okay, so here's an example. This one takes a bit of explanation, but an example of a recording that, captures some really interesting information. So in a buoy, there's something called co-compounds, which they are compounds in which the two words that make up the compound are at the same level. So it's not like a subordinating compound where one word modifies the other. An example of a co-compound in Alor Malay would be siripinang, where in English we have to say beetle vine and areca nut. We have to have that coordinating conjunction between them. But in Alor Malay, you can just say siripinang. So there's no and in the middle. And so in a buoy, you also have these co-compounds. And so in this example, the speaker shows one plant that's called tohabiki, and he shows another plant that's called mamali. And then he puts them together, gestures with his hands, bringing them together. And he says that you can just say tohabik mamali. So he's actually saying these plants are so linked that we can make a co-compound with them. So I will try to play that example.
Open di tefela do edi do. Open mamali open tohabiki. Tanga tohabukti tohabik mamali na.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to go to the next slide. Okay. Here's another example. In this one, it's beyond linguistics in information that's available from recording. So in this example that I'm going to play, the men who are wearing blue and red shirts are the experts of the plants in this particular village. Everyone else in the recording is the research team members. And so we are learning from the men in the red and the blue shirts how to identify the plants in this village on this hike. And so in this conversation, you'll see that some members of the research team think that this plant is tamarind, and they are corrected and told that it's a different plant, which in Abui is called kaiweti. I think it's a Phyllanthus species. I forget which species of Phyllanthus I think it is, but anyway. Yeah. And so what's interesting to me upon watching this recording that I hadn't initially really paid much attention to is that all of us touch the plant and take a bit of it and smell it. And so this recording highlights that we use that sensory information from touching it and smelling it to help us identify it.
Asam nih. Asam. Bukan asam. Asam. Asam lah.
Memang dia pun apa isi nanti asam juga.
Asam tuh.
Bukan.
Bukan. Dia memang seperti asam lah.
Oh, kayak
Dia tidak terlalu asam.
dia pun biji itu buahnya nanti kayak cermel. Benar.
Trying to go to the next slide. Okay, and now, so yeah, those are just some of the findings. And now the data dissemination, so where you can find the data. The documentary corpora here at ELAR, and then also at Paradisic. And then my dissertation, if you want to look more into, the information that I analyzed within the corpora. And then this is the iNaturalist project that I joined, Flora of Lesser Sunda. My username there is Blake Al. And I'm not the only contributor to this project, but yeah, so you can kind of tell on this little graph that shows the pie chart that shows the number of observations and the number of identifications. But this yellow, all these need identification. So not just my plants, the photos that I put in there, but other people's photos as well of this region are not very well identified at this time. So I'd love help with that if anyone knows what those plants are. And then in conclusion, so this documentation of plant-related language of the Abui people adds a particular endangered semantic domain to the Abui language documentation, as well as the documentation of Timor Alar Pantar languages more broadly. It demonstrates that principles and methods of language documentation can benefit ethnobotanical investigations. And some of the limitations: variable quality of recordings, photos, and transcriptions. Some of them are better than others. And then lack of verified scientific identifications of plants. So that is it. Terima kasih, or as they say in Abui, omikang. So thank you to the members of my research team, as well as the Abui consultants and the funding organizations. And thank you to all of you for listening, and of course, for the people who organized this webinar. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for Blake for the presentation. I hope you all enjoy the presentation today. Maybe I want to sum up a little from the Blake presentation. From Blake presentation, we can get your insight that the language documentation is not only talk about the general aspect like creating grammar or dictionary, but language documentation can also be more specific, such as a plant knowledge documentation that Blake has presented today. This is very interesting, and inspiring to all of us in Indonesia, especially in BRIN Indonesia. And before Q&A session, I would also to remind webinar participant to fill the attendance list or daftar hadir in the column so that the committee can provide certificates which will be sent to the registered email. Okay, now I will open the Q&A session. Please raise hand in the Zoom, and we have two questions. Okay, first, Bapak Joni and Dardi.
Ya, makasih Mas Iko. Pakai bahasa Indonesia saja Mas ya. Takutnya bahasa Inggrisnya nanti nggak nyampe gitu. Saya pengen bertanya sama Mas Black. Mas Black atau Mas Black? Mohon maaf kalau salah menyebutkan nama karena pronunciation-nya nanti orang Indonesia dengan orang Inggris beda gitu. Bukan berarti disengaja, tapi mungkin karena keterbatasan kami.
Tidak apa-apa.
Mas Black, saya ini ex peneliti pemetaan bahasa daerah seluruh Indonesia, bahkan mungkin dari Sabang sampai Merauke, mulai Miangas sampai Pulau Rote itu sudah saya kunjungi. Nah, ini data berserakan ini bisa dimanfaatkan untuk apa? Biar mungkin Mas Black juga bisa bekerja sama dengan kami gitu. Jadi bukan hanya sekedar webinar habis itu selesai, karena memang amanah dari Bapak LT Handoko ini kan selalu kita ke home base unit. Kalau mungkin nanti itu tidak harus ke home base unit, kita di Jogja, dari Jogja kita bisa buat sebuah semacam collaboration riset antar berbagai ilmu pengetahuan, itu bisa nggak dilaksanakan? Mohon jawabannya. Terima kasih.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Joni. For Black, you know what he means, or I will translate it to you.
So Tanya, pemanfaatan itu untuk orang penelitian atau untuk masyarakat atau kedua-duanya?
Untuk kedua-duanya, penelitian agar nanti riset itu bisa kolaborasi, mungkin bisa berkembang dengan penelitian arkeologi, bahkan juga dengan ilmu sains tech dan lain-lain sebagainya. Seperti itu. Karena data ini kaya sekali, Pak Black gitu. Dan ini tinggal mungkin kita ibaratnya kita tinjau kembali seperti itu. Terima kasih.
I think I understand the question, but feel free to correct me if I didn't.
Yeah, go on.
So the actual documentary corpus, it's focused on plant-related language. So I mean, my hope is that other researchers can use it for their research questions. For example, I know one researcher who is interested in historical linguistics, and so she is using some of my data to try to compare Abui to other languages, specifically with the plant names, to try to determine when did this particular plant come to the islands, based on whether it's a Papuan word or whether it's a loan word from Austronesian or that kind of thing. So I don't know fully. It depends on the research question, how people use the corpus. But other than what's in the corpus now, well, actually, yeah, but any general linguistic question you could use the corpus for, because there's many just natural conversations between people. Yeah, they happen to be talking about the harvest of the corn, but they're just using common language. Other than that, yeah, I would like to collaborate on future projects. But as far as what's in the corpus now, I think, yeah, I think ethnobotany and linguistics are probably the main applications. I would be curious if it was useful to like an archaeologist as well, but I'm not sure that it is. But I am interested in collaborating on those and future projects, if that makes sense. Yeah, and then for the community, it's more giving them a sense of pride of their language in their language, and then having that documentation done that they can refer back to when they are trying to do revitalization work in the schools. They can play video clips and that kind of thing. I hope that answered it. If not, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for
Terima
the
kasih,
answer.
Mas Black. Semoga nanti bisa datang ke Jogja, kita bisa berdiskusi. Dan kita bisa memanfaatkan dana.
Ya, betul sekali, Pak. Mungkin saya coba ringkas sedikit ya dari apa yang sudah dikatakan oleh Pak Black ini. Jadi banyak hal sebenarnya yang bisa dilakukan ya terkait dengan data yang sudah dipunyai Pak Joni maupun data yang dipunyai Bapak Ibu semua yang ada di seluruh Indonesia, dan semua itu tergantung dari pertanyaan penelitiannya sebetulnya seperti itu. Tapi satu hal yang pasti, Black terbuka untuk berkolaborasi dengan peneliti di Indonesia seperti itu. This is correct, Black? I hope you understand.
Yes.
Okay, now we move forward to Pak Wira Kafriawan. Oke, Bapak Wira.
Baik, terima kasih moderator. Hello, Black. It's very interesting about TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, and my questions related to biocultural knowledge. That I was wondering, how do indigenous languages encode specific ecological knowledge that may be difficult to translate or express in non-indigenous languages? Probably you can give me some answer, opinion about that. Thank you.
I thank you for the question. I'm trying to think of an example. So I'm thinking of just the names of plants, because that's kind of the simplest. Encoding is the name of the plant itself. There are some plants that if you just had the literal translation, you wouldn't know what it is, right? And so sometimes these are metaphors For example, there's a kind of spiderling in English, which is a Boharavia species. Boharavia is the genus. And in Abui, it's called Mako kasing. And Mako means like pot, and kasing means broken. And so it's like, or sorry, bowl. Mako means bowl, and kasing means like a shard. So it's like bowl shard. And so it's a metaphor because the leaves kind of look like they've been broken off of something, right? Like a broken bowl. So you have metaphoric plant names like that. But that one, Mako kasing, it just tells you what the plant looks like. Whereas there are other ones that instead of telling you what the plant looks like, maybe it tells you something about how the plant is used traditionally, or it tells you something about where the plant is found. And so this is still an ongoing question where I want to ask more speakers because I realized there's some speaker disagreement. So for example, there's a citrus, which is Atimur, and mur is just the Bui name for citrus, but ati means salt. So we translate this to salt citrus. But the citrus fruit does not taste salty. It tastes sour, just like every, well, not every, I guess some are sweet, but it's sour like a lemon or a lime. And so I asked a few people, why is it called salt citrus? And they didn't know, right? So this could be a sign that the TEK is being lost, even though the name is still intact. They haven't lost the name Atimur, but they don't know why it's called Atimur. And so I suspect that maybe this particular citrus grows well in salty soil. And so that this is the ecological information encoded in the plant name, but I still have to ask more knowledgeable Abui people to try to figure out if that's the case or if it's some other reason that it's named that. So I don't know that it's maybe an example of always hard to translate, but it's like there's extra information in there. I don't know. I don't know if that answered the question. Please let me know.
Yeah, is that enough, Mr. Wira? Is question answered? Or any response? Okay, I think that's enough. Next, we can move to third question. Can be asked to Pak Wayan Agus Anggayana. For Pak Wayan Agus Anggayana, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Proud of your research about Alor, Mr. Blake. On 2019, I was in Alor. My research dissertation, Lipang Langkuru Waisika, funding by LPDP. It is language documentation, linguistic historic comparative. I know also one of the men on the photo you saw just now, the name Bapak Abner, from Kampung Adat Takpala, Desa Lembur Barat, Kecamatan Alor Tengah. Very happy to see on your slide about the documentation. I would like to ask, may I know your contact? And the next question, is there any collaboration or joint research? Because this year's, but will research for the next year's, my team and I also apply for research, especially in Alor, for language documentation to bring. Maybe it's still process just now. I already attend coaching clinic 2 times. Maybe you can collaborate with us, with my team, to research in Alor for the next year, but we apply together to bring this year's. It will be very nice. Thank you very much, Mr. Blake. Very excited.
Okay.
Any response?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry I missed you in 2019, especially if you came to Takpala. I spent a lot of time in Takpala, Takalelang in 2019. Yeah, so I'm interested in collaboration with Indonesian researchers. I put my contact in the chat. Blake Al is usually my username on a lot of platforms, just my last name and my first initial, my middle initial. So yeah, please feel free to contact me and give me more details about the project. I can't commit to the project before I know what it is. So please explain more. But yeah, I'm very interested in, more language documentation on Alor and in the region in general. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any response of that?
Thank you.
Iwayan Agus? Okay, it's enough. Okay. This is great, yeah. This webinar can be collaboratively between participant and speakers today to create maybe one research, ya kan, to be applied in BRIN or the other institution. It's sounds great for me to hear that. Maybe anyone else who want to
Good morning.
Okay, Vanessa. Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
Vanessa, please
I
take your time.
yeah. Okay. Morning, Blake. I'm a doctoral student, and I'm in the middle of doing my dissertation, and then I have a really high interest to ELD, endangered language documentation, but you mentioned you mentioned before about the pedagogical material, right? And I want to know more about the relation or the connection between ELD and pedagogical material, because my department is like education of language and literature, so I have to connect between ELD and pedagogical thing. If you okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry,
Very good.
the question was submitted by Mr. Tanu Melintang Siri Suwikyo, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Public, please answer the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, thank you. Very good question. So the only pedagogical materials that I myself have planned is a trilingual plant book for SMP students, basically, around that level. And actually, we spent a lot of time working on this book, and I'm very sorry to say it's still not finished, because we wanted to put information about the plants that everybody agreed on. But the problem was people did not agree. So, editing the book took a lot of time, and I had to stop working on it to finish my dissertation, and now I hope to go back to working on it. But otherwise, in general, so the good thing about having a transcribed corpus is that you can search it, right? So, and also that it's natural language data. I mean, not all of it, because sometimes it is interview kind of question, but a lot of it is just natural conversation. And so if you're trying to teach, how a specific grammatical construction in a buoy works, it's great to be able to have real examples that you can show students, right? Rather than trying to make up some sort of pretend dialogue, you can actually look how the speakers are using that grammatical construction or that particular, word. So the corpus is great for that, for being able to search for those things. And then just, depending on what you're trying to teach, right? And yeah, I would say it's useful for that. It's also just yeah, to like notice variation in how, okay, this speaker says it this way, but this speaker says it this way. So because you have a variety of speakers recorded, you're not just relying on one speaker and how they say it. So it helps with kind of showing how variation works within the language as well, which I know is difficult to teach variation because students just want to know, you say it this way. But yeah, so you could use it for that as well. But yeah, I think mainly it's good for pulling up real examples, and so you know, you can kind of make those frames for students, fill in the blank, right? Once you have the real example, and they can build on that and try to, after they see 5 examples of how this word is used, maybe they can make their own sentence using it, right? Something like that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay, so that is used for a PUI student, not for like the student who wants to learn Abui's language.
No, yeah, so like for the younger generation that is not fluent in Abui, right? That their Abui is not as strong as their parents, to keep the language strong if they want to learn it, something like that. But actually, you reminded me that it can be useful for learning English as well, because there are all the English translations, right?
Yeah. It's just because I had a lot of students in my campus from NTT, Sumba, and there's a lot of endangered language like Lamboya, and then a lot of their languages are endangered, and then they're not have any like a standard documentation. So I want to make that and contribute to make them easier to study. Okay, thank you, Blake, for sharing.
Okay, anyone or any else you want to discuss, Mbak Hanum or Blake? Maybe any other response? No?
Sudah, dari saya sudah Pak Satwiko, terima
Okay,
kasih.
thank you from Mbak Hanum. Now we have Banisa, okay, from Brain. Okay, Banisa, please.
Thank you, Blake. You really nailed your talk. Even I learned a lot. So I have some questions for you. Some are quite technical actually, because I was also planning to work on this type of documentation. So yeah, I know there's a Kindle. So how did you use the Kindle actually? Because it's should be a Kindle reader, right? And then did you use PDF for that? And yeah, so that's one. And another one is, so when you were recording using a GoPro, I know this style, very cool. But then the speakers, they speak in Kupang Malay, right? So did you transcribe that, or did you only pick up the word, or how did they, once they figure out the name of the plant, did they say it twice, something like that, more technical? And then, yeah, I'm also interested in the combined words like Siri, Pinang. Yeah, so did you see any pattern in this? Like in the videos, the two guys, the guy, right, was showing two plants that can collocate, use together. So is it like this, the pattern is like they are usually used together, like siripina, like the plants for cooking, something like that? And the last one, I never use iNaturalist, but you did mention that it's very helpful. So maybe you can illuminate us more. And then did you link that your picture there with your archive in Alor, or yeah, or Paradise? All right, that's all. A bit a lot. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, Blake, please answer the please.
Yeah. But I'm like, you had so many, now I have to make sure I remember what the second one is. I only started writing them down at the end. The second one was about role. Oh yeah, if they speak actually Alor Malay. Okay. Okay, so first of all, yeah, it's very technical, thank you. So the Kindle, yeah, you can put PDFs on the Kindle. So you can type a document in Microsoft Word or whatever, make it into a PDF, and then, connect your Kindle by a cable to your computer and put it on the Kindle. So rather than having to print a whole lot of pages, if I had anything long, if I just had interview questions, I could make a PDF of interview questions, put them on the Kindle, and then I didn't have to print anything, and I didn't have to worry about the laptop dying or the laptop making noise when I'm trying to interview, because the Kindles doesn't make any noise either. And the battery lasts 2 weeks. It's crazy. And this is like a old Kindle I bought used, like $30, and lasted well over 5 years, maybe 8 years, 10 years. So the old ones are good. You don't need the fancy new ones that have Wi-Fi and all that stuff. So yeah, that's that. And then with the GoPro recordings and stuff, I don't know. I mean, I've only been hiking with Abui people in Indonesia, so I don't know if other people hike differently. But Abui people like to walk really fast when they're hiking, and they don't like to talk very much when they're hiking in general. So the use of the GoPro, it does have an audio recorder, but it's not, high quality audio recording. And even the video, you probably noticed, is kind of wobbly because the speakers or the person wearing the GoPro is moving his head a bit, right? But it really was the most practical thing for recording the surrounding environment of where that particular plant is growing. And so I did transcribe the GoPro recordings as they were spoken, which was a lot of Alor Malay, but not always, sometimes Abui. I transcribed them as they were spoken, but sometimes the transcription wasn't clear, if there was a stream nearby or something, or if the speaker was too far away from the GoPro. Because if we had a group of 5 or 6 of us hiking, I would try to tell the person wearing the GoPro, get close to whoever's talking the most, but sometimes you didn't catch everything. So that has been a criticism by Brad, by the way. Nisa knows who Brad is. That why not have people wear lapel mics individually while they hike? Because having 5 different recorders with 5 different lapel mics is quite expensive and is way less natural for hiking, is basically the answer. But it's also because Abui people didn't usually talk much about the plants when we were hiking. It's later back in the village. They sit down, they relax. You can ask them more in-depth questions about the plants. So the GoPro documentation is really mostly for capturing the physical environment where the plant is growing and kind of remembering in what order we saw everything that corresponds with the photos throughout the hike. In case, the photo gets mixed up and we forget what it is, it's not a good photo, we can't tell what plant it is, you can go back and look at the recording. And the GoPro lasts 2 hours. So yeah. I think that answered all that one. Okay. Onto the sorry, co-compounds. Yeah. There are patterns in the Abui co-compounds. Now, I was only looking at the co-compounds within plants, right? The plant domain. But Abui has co-compounds throughout the language, right? It's not just in the plant domain. And so I'm only looking at nominal co-compounds, whereas with verbs, you could say maybe the serial verbs are related. But anyway, I was only looking at nominal co-compounds within the plant domain. And I found that most of them are what's called collective co-compounds. So it's actually, I'll give you an example. So siang in Abui is rice and fat is corn. And if you say siang fat, it doesn't mean just rice and corn. It means grains as a whole. So it would include sorghum, or it would include millet. So these collective co-compounds, you take like the main two members, like rice and corn, and you say them together, and it actually means something greater than just rice and corn. So most of them that I found were like that. They're like superordinate terms, kind of. But then I found other ones that are additive co-compounds, which would be something like the siripinang, or in a buoy that's fu mating, where it really is just those two things that are used together. Whereas with the collective co-compounds, it tends to be a group like, yeah, grains or like tubers or bamboos. So it's not necessarily that they're used together, but that they are physically similar, or yeah, mostly that they're, physically similar. Yeah, I think that's most of the co-compound patterns. Also, there are like new ones that people are making. Like I heard somebody say apel salak, and apel and salak are not traditional abui plants, but they made a co-compound out of it. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if apel salak just means apples and salak, or if it means exotic fruits, right? I'm not sure on that one. I just have one example of somebody saying it, so would need more examples or would need to ask people more to know that one. But it does tell you that like it's productive, like people keep making new co-compounds. And then for the iNaturalist, I'm not sure what to share. It does, I guess what might be useful to know is that iNaturalist has different like languages, interfaces, so you can use iNaturalist in Indonesian, or right now I have mine set up that it shows me it always shows the scientific name, but it shows me the Hawaiian name and the English name and the Indonesian name right now. You can only have 3 languages maximum, so I picked those 3. And yeah, you can use the app on your phone, or you can log in on your laptop. You just make an account and you put the photos, and you put the location of where you took the photos, and then other people will help identify them. And there's also like an AI component. So the computer vision, they call it, will suggest what the AI thinks the plant or animal is. It will suggest it, and you can compare, see if the AI is right or wrong. It's usually pretty good, but sometimes it's wrong. So it's both using AI to identify plants and animals, and using what's it called? I'm blanking on the word. Getting other people. And there are quite a few scientists on there. You'll see people's profiles. They'll say, I'm a botanist in Costa Rica or whatever. So it's not just lay people. There's quite a few botanists, and zoologists that use iNaturalist. So I prefer it to PlantSnap. PlantSnap is the other one, but it's just for plants. But it's a similar crowdsourcing, that's the word. It's a similar combination of crowdsourcing and AI for identification. So, and no, it's not very well linked to the iNaturalist site is not very well linked to all my
Yeah.
It's not very well linked to my documentation corpus. I wish that there were a tool that could like easily link all those things. They're just not usually linked, because you want like the location where the plant was, the actual photo of the plant, and the recording where it's talked about, like linked together, but it's not quite possible to do that. I have to do, okay, the language archive has the video and the audio recording, but then iNaturalist has the photo and the location. So that's just kind of like the limitation of the tools where they are now. Okay, that was a long response, but you did have 4 questions, so I hope that's it, but let me know if
Yeah,
there's
thank
more.
you. Sorry, that was a lot. My last statement is I think it's the Americans who chat a lot while hiking. I found it that way.
Okay, now we move to Muhammad Isnaini. Okay, to Mas Isnaini, please.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the moderators and thanks, Black, yeah. Black or Blake? Blake, yeah. Thank you. Very nice your presentation, and I would be very happy if you could inform us. We know that ethnobotany may be interrelated, between people and the plants. And as we know, maybe the plants for the humans can be used for food, maybe, or for medicine, or for shelter. And actually, we have to learned about ethnobotanical from the perspective from the local knowledge, yeah. So that's why it is very interesting. And I would like to know your findings. Is there any relation, your findings with the medicine or with the food or any use of the plants for the humans? Maybe. That's the first. And the second one, as traditional knowledge, I know that maybe your context in USA and in Indonesia is very different about plants actually, because Indonesia has a specific plant and in maybe there is no kind of this plant in USA. So to cope with this problem, what do you do? Yeah, so we have good research in this kind of plan. Yeah, that's the second. And the third one, how do you know or what do you think of ethnobotanical in relations with the modern research? Maybe you can relate it with the medicine or how? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Now, Blake, please answer the question.
Okay, thank you. Very good questions. Yeah, so in the recordings, some knowledgeable Abui people explain uses of the plants, including food, including medicine, including construction, including what crafts or tools. And so some of that information, this is a little bit more delicate with the medicine matter because I do consider this to be the intellectual property of the Abui people, but that doesn't mean that everyone else would consider it to be, right? And so, for example, there was one recording of a traditional healer, and he gave five traditional remedies, but he didn't go into a lot of detail about exactly what the dose is, right? Or something like that, right? Like a general idea of how the plant can be used without giving too many specific details of like his exact recipe for making the medicine. And after he gave these five traditional cures, he actually realized that two of them, he didn't want to share that information. And so we actually deleted the latter part of that recording. He realized that he wanted to keep that medicinal information secret and wasn't ready to put it in an archive. The other part of the archive is there are a couple of recordings that are restricted. So that's because they're not transcribed. So I'm not sure what information is on them. Or they're transcribed, but they're not translated. And so I'm not ready to make those available to other researchers until I'm sure that it's information that the Abui people are okay with sharing with the outside world, and that, yeah, it's not so specific that it can easily be taken advantage of by somebody else copying their intellectual property. Because Indonesia does not have very good laws protecting indigenous people's intellectual property at the moment. So that's mostly with the medicine. The other stuff is not particularly sensitive, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, other people in the area use the same plant for the same thing that the Abui people do. But there's probably other things that are unique to them. And so I'm really interested in, you know, more comparative studies. But yeah, as of now, I have, you know, the biggest ethnobotanical documentation of on Alor Island at all. So I don't know. There's nothing else for other. Please tell me if you know of anything else that could compare it to other groups on Alor. But as I mentioned, there's better coverage of like some groups on Flores and Timor, at least historically. Anyway, so yeah, lots of information about plant uses, and people are usually very excited to share that as well.
So sorry, do you find maybe the mythology of plant? Maybe in Indonesia there are many mythology. So do you find about this?
Sorry,
The
what do you mean?
mythology of the plant?
Oh, mythology.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. A little bit. So we did get some like, actually not too much. I'm trying to think. There's not too much with the plants that I've found or that people have spontaneously shared, but I didn't ask them too much about mythology.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you right now, I'm collaborating with my Abui researcher Benny Del Pata. He's also published a lot of works on Abui about fish and bird names. We're just starting to look at those, and those there seems to be a little bit more mythology. A lot of birds have like omens of whether they're bad luck or they're bringing news that somebody's coming, a visitor's coming, or they're bringing news that somebody died, or yeah, there seems to be more mythology there. I can't think of too much with the plants. Nothing is coming to mind. Yeah, other than actually, I think it's probably in the ritual verse where it shows up, which is like when people dance the Lego dance in the circle, and they say pantun. Somebody leads the song, right? Kind of creates the song. I think there's a lot of symbolism in there, but I haven't really analyzed that because that's like very complicated ritual language where it's like a lot of those words aren't even used in normal Abui anymore. So I think that's probably more of the, maybe not mythology, but symbolism of the plants. Yeah, comes from. Yeah, nothing else that I could think of at the moment, but I'll try to think more about that. So I'll go on to your next question then, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, what to do if the plant doesn't grow in the US? Fortunately, there is a fair amount of overlap between plants that grow in Hawaii and that grow in Indonesia. So some of the plants I knew already. I was like, okay, good. I know this one, from Hawaii. But other ones I did not. And so yeah, I think vines are especially difficult to identify. But also just, yeah, very, very tall trees, and I can't see the leaves way up there, but somehow the Abui people know what kind of tree it is. I just trying to look way up and see the leaf, but I don't know from the bark. So yeah. But I mean, I would just say like, just interacting with the plants helps me know them better. So for example, like rattan, right? Like there's many different kinds of rotan. And so I participated in like twisting the rattan to make a rope to repair some construction on the traditional house. So like I would call that like participant observation. So like as I'm like twisting the rattan, I kind of like learn how it works and learn more about the plant. Because it's harder to twist than it looks. And how to make rope. Yeah, so something like that, or like, okay, observing that the small bamboo is used for like making basically like window slats, you know, but the bigger bamboo is used for bigger construction projects. So I would just say, yeah, like interacting with the plants and learning from the people then, and taking the photos. I mean, if I look at my photos long enough, I kind of, and I look at the plant long enough, I get to know the plant, right? Even if I don't have it back in Hawaii, I can still watch the video and look at the photo back in Hawaii. So yeah, I don't think it's too much of a problem if it doesn't grow in the US. What is a problem, what was a problem was that I didn't get to go to Alor for the full year. So I would arrive in May and leave in August, which is the end of the rainy season and mostly the dry season. And so some plants, I would keep seeing the plant and I would be like, I want to know what the flower looks like. I want to know what the fruit looks like. They said, well, you have to come back in rainy season for that. It's not flowering now. It's not fruiting now, right? So I only had one, only in 2019, I was able to come twice, 2 3 months trips. And the second one was like September through December. And of course, that's when Alor has been struggling with drought, right? The drought has been getting worse. And so people would say, well, usually the rainy season is supposed to start now, but it still didn't start until late December that year. So even the one time when I was hoping to get some rainy season plants, only got a few rainstorms towards the very end of the trip. So yeah, that's a big limitation. What I have to do better on that is keep reminding my Abui friends to go get photos of those plants, because I remind them at some point and then I forget to remind them in that particular month, and then they say, oh, it already finished fruiting. I forgot to get a photo. So yeah, so the time really, you know, matters with the seasonality of the plants. And then what about, I'll go to your next question if that's okay. What about ethnobotany and modern research? Yeah. So of course there is that, you know, medicinal thing of, okay, some diseases have been on Alor Island for a very long time, like malaria, right? Other ones are new, like COVID or HIV, right? And it's possible that some of those traditional cures for different diseases could be applied to new diseases, right? Abui people will say that it works. It would help if there were scientific studies, you know, verifying that. But again, that runs into the danger of the Abui people not being fairly compensated for their knowledge, right? It runs into the danger of bioprospecting, of a pharmaceutical company trying to patent a traditional cure so they can make lots of money. So there is possibilities there between modern medicinal research and traditional ethnobotany, but it has to be, the partnerships have to be worked out very carefully to make sure that the indigenous people are not taken advantage of. But also modern ecological research, because there's a really good complement there. Because most modern studies of ecology are short-term, right? Like maybe the longest study is a year long or something. And maybe they're looking at the population of, I'm trying to think of a particular thing. Usually I'm thinking of animals, but maybe they're looking at plants, right? So, or yeah, maybe they're looking at the population of the Timor white gum, right? A eucalyptus tree or something. They want to see what it's dying of, if the population's decreasing over time or something, right? And so you have a lot of like quantitative data that's gathered, right? A lot of measuring and all that scientific quantitative data, but it's so short term. And so they may say, okay, we have all this data from the results. It looks like this is the case, but you really need to also ask the elders about the traditional knowledge about this species, right? So they haven't been measuring everything exactly, but they've been keeping track for a much longer period of time what's going on with that species. And they're probably much more aware of like other interactions maybe you're only looking at the tree and the one bug that attacks the tree. But they're looking at the tree, the bug that attacks the tree, the bird that nests in the tree, the other plants that grow near the tree. Like they're usually more aware of a lot of different ecological interactions. So I think any studies in ecology, the traditional knowledge and the modern research really complements each other well. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, that's enough for Mas Isnaini. Last but not least, we have Panando Saragi. Yep. To Panando Saragi, please give your question to Black directly. Hello, Panando Saragi. Are you still interested to ask question? Okay, maybe that's enough. Yeah, I'm very happy. Yeah, today because today there is many questions from the webinar participants. This show that the topic presented by Black is very interesting. Yeah, and I also glad to know all of that information that I just to know today. Okay, that's very cool. Before we close the session, maybe Pak Katubi, as head of Research Center for Language and Literature Preservation, would to like share something or give any thought before we end the session webinar? Ada yang ingin disampaikan, Bapak? Tidak? Oke, mungkin tidak. Ya. If there are no more questions, so today webinar has reached the end of the session. Thank you again for Blake to answering those questions and for the great presentation. It was pleasure to have you with us. On behalf of Research Center for Language and Literature Preservation, I would like to say thank you to all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this amazing presentation, and see you again at the next monthly webinar from the Research Center for Language and Literature Preservation. Terima kasih. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you, Blake.
Oh, what time is there? Is it like you're in San Diego?
Yeah, it's only
Yeah.
it's only 7:30. It's not too late at night.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great. All right, we're just gonna wait.
Ya, terima kasih Bapak Ibu. Jangan lupa isi daftar hadir. Jika sudah, silakan meninggalkan ruang Zoom. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Mas Satwiko.
Hmm.